Thank you all for joining us today. Okay, so today the session is Unearthing Deep Tech Talents. And my name is Susan. I'm from StartCentral. So I believe most of you are already aware of us. So at StartCentral, we help researchers, entrepreneurs on their startup journey. So many of the deep tech talents who want to build a career out of the lab or research have difficulty finding the opportunity. Whereas deep tech startups or organizations face challenges in hiring the right talent. So today's topic aims to explore these two areas, and we are honored to have Peng, Deputy Program Director from Singapore Biodesign, to moderate this session. So I will leave the introduction of our panelists to Dr. Lee. So please.
Thank you, Susan. A very good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to our panel discussion on discovering deep tech talent. For all those who are joining us for the first time, perhaps we can start by a very brief definition of what deep tech actually refers to. In essence, deep tech is actually technological innovations based on scientific discovery or meaningful engineering innovation, but they're typically disruptive in nature, have a strong impact in our everyday lives, but are also known to require a long developmental runway. Now, since deep tech is so challenging, how should we go about recruiting for deep tech? Hopefully our panelists today will be able to shed some light on this. So let us begin maybe by hearing a little bit more about each of you, what you do and where you're from. Jasmine, would you like to start?
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. So I'm Jasmine from SGInnovate. So SGInnovate, we're a VC, and within SGInnovate, we have different teams such as the community team, venture investments, and venture building, as well as where I sit in talent networking, to work hand in glove with entrepreneurial scientists to help them scale up. So within my team at talent networking, I'm a business partner. I work with founders to help them connect with the right people that they need, and also address issues relating to their teams. So a bit about myself. My interest in startups has led me to spend almost about 10 years now working with tech startups, both in Singapore and before in Silicon Valley. So I've had a very exciting journey working in areas such as tech accelerators, early stage investments, and most recently in where I'm doing business partnering. So yeah, moving on to the next person to introduce.
Thanks, Jasmine. Thank you. Tiffany, how about you?
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Tiffany from Entrepreneur First. I lead the talent team at EF Singapore to go out into the world and look for the world's most talented and ambitious individuals to help them start deep tech companies from scratch. The way we do this is Entrepreneur First, we are a talent investor. So we invest in individuals purely based on their skills and knowledge and their potential to be the founder of their own tech companies. And we do this through our 6-month program. So we first invest in them as an individual. And after 3 months, we decide if we would like to also invest in their team and their idea and help them start their companies. The kinds of talent that we look for are typically, there are 2 main categories. So there is the technical talent, which mostly comprises of people with deep, unique technological knowledge and skills. So they typically are PhD graduates, for example, or have done research in the lab for a lot of their career, and or they are really skilled product builders that are able to build tech products from scratch. The other category of people that we look for are commercial talents. So anyone that's been in a certain industry and knows the ins and outs of it, the pain points of what needs to be solved in their industries, or they have a track record of scaling businesses and teams from 0 to 1. I'm super excited to be here. Hope I can help answer some questions.
Thanks, Tiffany. Now on to Kai, maybe.
Hi, everyone. So my name's Kai. I'm CEO of Mercurics. We are a people analytics company. Just a bit about my background first. So I've spent the past 10 years in HR, everything from HR business partnering to internal learning development to internal talent acquisition. More specifically relevant to this kind of webinar would be my experience within Robert Walters and recruitment consultancy, specifically for technology, and more specifically data scientists, data engineers, so on and so forth. And then moving on from that, recruitment within the startup scene, and now, of course, CEO of Mercurics. So a bit of background on Mercurics. What we're doing is we're a computational psychology startup that merges psychology and computer science together. We do a lot of psychometric testing for job fit, as well as projects, for example, when it comes to social listening, population bases. So mainly people analytics work tied together with psychometric testing. Yep.
Cool, thanks, Kai. So before we begin, maybe just let me plug Singapore Biodesign a bit. So basically, Singapore Biodesign is a health tech innovation talent training program, a national platform. So for us, I guess we could be the ones you could say generating some of these talents that could be in deep tech. And I think a lot of the past fellows to really benefit from some of the topics and questions that we're going to discuss today. So let's move into that. So first topic is actually about leveraging some of these available platforms and software for companies to look for talent. So, maybe we can begin by just asking all the panelists, how are they actually utilizing LinkedIn or any kind of AI software in your search for talents? How can startups actually utilize such platforms to look for these talents? Kai, would you like to begin first?
Oh yeah, sure. So basically, back when I was a recruitment consultant, most of the time, the biggest tool that we used was LinkedIn, of course. And after that would be our own personal network. So back when I was specifically doing recruitment, the biggest plus point that any recruitment consultant has is their own network. So you basically spend your entire day network building. And if you're looking at it from probably the most effective way of finding talent, I still go back to the traditional route of course, basic your own network would probably be the best. But of course, after that would be then reaching out through people through LinkedIn, or trying to build your own network manually, asking friends for recommendations. It's still probably the most ideal. Yeah.
Cool. How about Tiffany?
Yeah. So my team and the talent team here at EF Singapore, we are tasked with finding 80 individuals every 6 months who would like to quit their jobs and try and start their own company. So I would say we are in a very unique position when it comes to finding talent. And as Kai mentioned, network, our personal network and our alumni community network is something that we treasure a lot. But next to that, obviously LinkedIn is our best friend. So we do a lot of, so we use it for two things, right? So your executive search, which is conventional, like you can use your Boolean searches. And there are other tools on LinkedIn that we find particularly helpful as well. So we rely a lot on LinkedIn as a digital marketing platform also. And obviously the feature of, the second degree connections, again, based on our alumni network. I think that's, so instead of, waiting for introductions to happen, we actively go out and look through the second degree, third degree connections of some of the people, the best people we know, the best founders we know, and select the profiles that we'd like to ask for introductions. So, and I would say actually a lot of our research and homework in looking for talent happens outside of LinkedIn, right? We looked at a lot of other platforms. For example, if we need to look for scientific or technical talent, we would go on ResearchGate, Google Scholars, and or if we're looking for product builders, we look at places like Stack Overflow and GitHub. And then once we've identified those people, then we try and reach out to them on LinkedIn. So I would say LinkedIn is not the be all end all, but it certainly is a very helpful tool. I mean, it was built for that. So that's how we use LinkedIn.
Yeah, great. I think some of these tips can be used by startups as well, not just like large institutions or organizations. How about SGInnovate, Jasmine?
Yeah, so perhaps adding on to what Kai and Tiffany shared, how we use LinkedIn. We also have a mix of off-the-shelf talent solutions that we use. We also have our own database. So all these incorporate some of our preferred assessments. And at the same time, when startups work with us, we advise them to not just post and pray, like putting a JD out and hopefully people apply to you, then you can just screen through there. We also chip in on how they may want to complement that effort So we implement quite a number of interaction intensive activities that just cannot be automated. So the aim is that we get very active in engaging talents, and we've started the process really early to support our founders. We've gone into schools, talked to deans. We've also been very active, with StartCentral, Apex, people who are looking out maybe a few years before they actually go into the job market. But we get the conversations going, get our startups profiled. So that's what we do quite a lot. We also select candidates via job sites outside of LinkedIn. This could be Glassdoor, Indeed. We've also brought interviews online after we've selected these candidates for our companies. So we hosted activities like Comet. These are talent matching sessions where we did interviews of software dev profiles for about 6 hiring companies. So we relied on a mix of such online channels to attract these profiles, and they were eventually just screened via different technical assessments. Also, I think startups can think about how they want to build their pipeline of talents during this period where it's quite uncertain. With COVID, that might linger for a few months. And perhaps in the year in, that they want to be ready with in-house talent when the business picks up again. So SGInnovate has been, plugging a gap here. So we've been looking at how startups can offer roles to junior talents in emerging tech. These could be in data science, blockchain, or quantum. So profiles that are, looking to graduate or like coming off school. They can go on to our program called Summation. This is like an in-house deep tech apprenticeship program. We offset some of the costs for our companies to be able to onboard some of these junior talents, but they are very much plugged in to support them, mentoring them, doing pair programming with such talents, getting them ready when they want to hire them full time. These people can be a ready pool that they can use already. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jasmine. So now that we know some of these, platforms and different sort of ways that companies can go about searching, can we actually have a bit more detail as to what goes through your mind when you're looking at one's profile? What exactly do you kind of look out for, especially like at EF or Tiffany?
Yeah, sure. So at EF, when we look for potential candidates who could be potential tech startup founders, we have 4 main things that we look for. So the first is, are they smart? And I know it sounds very like, oh, of course, they need to be smart. But what we mean by that is, do they have strong clarity of thought? Are they able to break down really complex ideas? I think especially if they're technical individuals, are they able to break down their complex tech to the layman? This is going to be really important when you're pitching your idea to investors, for example. The second thing we look for is, are they skilled? So do they have unique technical skills, or do they have unique market insights that they're able to leverage and start companies based on those? But I think what's probably more interesting is the founder characteristics that we look for, right? So at EF, we're looking for outliers, people that have challenged conventions and are able to and have a strong drive to achieve, that willing to like run through walls to achieve a certain goal. And the last one we look for is we're looking for leaders, people that can build followership for themselves. Especially if you're going to be an early stage startup founder, that's going to be super important when you hire your first team, as well as meet investors or get your first customers, right? So these are the kind of like selection criteria that we have when it comes to looking for future founders. So when we go through someone's profile on LinkedIn, it's not always the case that we run into a dream profile that tells us all these things. But I mean, if only we could make our job a lot easier. But so as Kai mentioned, we look at the profile, but at the end of the day, we still would need to have a conversation with that individual. It's still, at the end of the day, talent is ultimately a very human business. So we will still need to have a conversation, but there are certain indicators, I would say, on paper that we can look for. For example, did this person stay in one single role or one single lab for 10 years and have done nothing but work on this tech? Then this is probably someone who's really tied to academia, very tied to fundamental research, for example, and maybe has no interest in trying to commercialize the tech, then so in that sense, we would prioritize someone who's maybe sought out other opportunities, like if they've tried joining hackathons in the past, or if they have moved countries. So researchers that might be from Singapore and have tried to do research in University of Tokyo or Oxford, and so we're looking for people who are outliers that challenge conventions and are a little bit more contrarian. And so these are like little hints that we can pick up on paper.
Okay, great, thanks, Tiffany. What about at SGInnovate? You know, when you guys are doing talent matching, you know, what do you guys look out for?
So I would say that because startups need people who can be put in charge of tasks at the get-go, so we're seeking those who have demonstrated experience. So it can be something as simple as showing that you've improved an AI model with how many % accuracy improvement, having done this on the side, or taken on online courses that you've internalized that knowledge. Or it can also be that you've done it before through a previous job. So having that stated out in terms of accomplishments, then just listing your responsibilities within your CV, I think that would be super helpful. So, you know, as Tiffany mentioned, things like going off the beaten track, you know, taking part in hackathons, and also probably taking up internships and attachments with industry exposure, despite, you know, working on research at a certain research institute. I think that helps as well to show that you have some inclination to come out and commercialize what you're doing. Having lab projects, but also I think ultimately that the person is gonna be committed. So things like having stayed on in a job for more than 6 months, I think that would be also something we look for too. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so these are some of the things that you might look out for, you know, yourself manually, or for each different startup, they might have some different criteria. But now we have some of these AI software popping up that you know, is changing the landscape for talent searching and talent matching. You know, how is it doing that, and what are the metrics in place? Could we actually design it to our advantage? Kai, would you like to talk a bit about that?
So within that scene of AI and recruitment, part of the reason that a lot of, when you look at the HR spectrum, a lot of the focus has been on the recruitment aspects and tackling that issue, because recruitment is expensive. If you hire a recruitment consultant, you're spending a lot of money just to find one single person. So it seems that a lot of startups or a lot of tech companies are focusing to address that one single issue, and then neglecting a lot of other aspects of HR. But it makes total sense why. It is very difficult to find people. And what can you do to streamline this process? And the biggest part of this is initially the shortlisting. Shortlisting individuals takes the biggest amount of time for a HR individual, for any talent acquisition or any kind of recruiter. So the question is always like, how do I reduce this shortlist? So you got some companies that are implementing chatbots to do the interviewing, or they're doing some kind of face-to-face interviewing, where there is one funny experience that a friend of mine had when he recently attended an interview where he's interviewing himself. So through a video call like this, I see my face, and then I see questions appear on the screen, and I have to speed interview myself. And the feedback from the people that use this tool was like, actually, some of the videos that come out of it are pretty funny. And most people feel very uncomfortable doing this. There's one main thing which I always want to tie down. In the recruitment process, it's very hard to eliminate the human interaction aspect of the recruitment cycle. Because then again, we're going to be working with these people, so that face-to-face interaction and, you know, whether or not you get along with this person is so important. But then, of course, this also leads to biasness. So you might meet someone face-to-face and you think, wow, this guy's amazing. This person, they have such an amazing personality. I get along with them. I can see that, you know, we could potentially go well together. But then letting you know, when they come on board, a month or two later, you realize that actually they've changed quite a bit, and what you saw during the interview was just purely face value. So this whole AI in the recruitment scene it's a difficult part, like aspect to tackle. And so far, I don't think anyone has really addressed it because of that human need for interaction and that basically that fundamental aspect that as people, we need to get along, right? If I'm gonna hire someone, I wanna make sure we get along in different types of aspects of work. So for us here at Mercurics, what we're focusing on is the personality aspects of recruitment, and therefore also tackling the shortlisting process. So a lot of time in the industry, there are a lot of companies that do pre-employment assessments, but they don't fully utilize it the way it could be utilized. And that's one thing that we want to tackle. So getting people on board, getting to do a pre-employment personality assessment based on culture fit. Okay? Then using Mercurics' AI engine to then come up with inferences on different types of traits and then matching the individual based on team. This is a way for our way of addressing the initial shortlisting, right? What we can do with our technology is basically reduce the amount of questionnaires, because what is currently existing in the market is you got someone do a pre-employment assessment that's like 100, 200 questions long. You don't want to get your potential hires exposed to such a long questionnaire either. So the thing that we do is we reduce it, and we only ask questions that are specific to that job role. For example, I don't need to know if an accountant is an extrovert. That usually doesn't matter. So that's something that we do. So basically, long story short, when it comes to AI within recruitment, there are a lot of companies trying to address this. I still think that it's very hard to remove that personal face-to-face interaction out of it. What I believe is that we can substitute it through for example, through shortlisting. That is one of the key things we can tackle, shortlisting, initial shortlisting, to then be able to have the face-to-face interaction with the people that we feel fit properly based on culture or personality and so forth.
Yep, great. Thanks, Kai. So as we move forward in this panel, I just want to make sure that you guys, all our audience members know that you can actually go onto the Q&A section of Zoom to ask any questions that you may have. And then we would tackle that later in the Q&A section of the panel. So moving on, now we know that shortlisting is important and that there are some of these things that you can look out for to initially filter out your initial list. And we know that, especially for startups, it's really important to have strong core team members, because you only have like 2 or 3 founders at the beginning, right? Yeah, so maybe, Tiffany, could you share a little bit about the key traits that they should possess? So maybe, certain search terms that you would use in LinkedIn, for example.
Is this for my team looking for future founders, or are you asking for for startup founders to hire their early employees?
I think startup founders. Let's help the startups here. What can the startup founder use in terms of the key traits? So maybe what EF does is they bring all these people who could, who look like they would be good founders. They could form good founders. And then how would you, figure out, matching them? In essence, when you're matching them, that's kind of what the startup. If the startup has 1 founder at the beginning, that's sort of what the thought process could be. How do I pick my second person, right? What key traits should I be looking out for?
I think skills-wise, right? As startup founders, you firstly shouldn't be hiring for just what you need now, but look really into the next 18 months, the direction where you want to grow your company. So firstly, keeping in mind what you need in a team, what are some of the skill gaps that are currently missing that you need to grow your company in the next 18 months. And depending on that, then design an interview process to test on the things that you care about. But at the same time, I don't think early employees are that different when it comes to us looking for future founders in terms of the behavior traits, the founder characteristics, for example. And one of the things would definitely be the risk appetite. I would say look for candidates that are hungry to make an impact based on what they can do, based on their skills, and look for candidates that have a track record of building things from scratch with very little resources at hand, because that's going to be probably what their job would entail when they join your company at such an early stage. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of our startup founders, once they get funded by EF and they're looking to hire their first 3 employees, for example, they look to the EF community, the EF alumni, because precisely they know that the people that come onto EF already possess these traits. Yeah, so they look, we have a lot of early stage founders that hire within their same cohort actually, but other than that, also like referrals from previous cohorts.
Great, yeah. So if I want to work in a startup, I should try to join at EF.
Application deadline is 31st May if anyone wants to apply.
Fantastic. How about at SGInnovate, Jasmine? Do you have any key traits that you can recommend to the startups?
Well, these startups move quickly to adapt to new circumstances all the time. They also have to work through ambiguity. So I think the makeup of a deep tech talent would involve both technical capabilities that the founders should really scope out, do a competency assessment within the team, what's lacking currently that you need to hire someone for, and that's going to be a new profile altogether that's diverse, increasing the diversity quotient of the team. And also the person that you want to bring on board should have the kind of right attitude and mindset, risk appetite for sure. Being an excellent communicator, I think that is going to be super helpful, because startups will prefer those who can transit into team leads later on. Having trained someone on the job, if the person stays on, brings on new team members that they can train, that just leaves a lot less on the founder's shoulders ultimately. So soft skills like that, communicating well, having a flexible approach to changes, being able to learn fast, a very hands-on person, willing to get, roll up the sleeves and really get going. I think that's going to be what founders should look out for. So to share an example, there was this startup in our portfolio. They needed a senior embedded developer. So they reached out to us for help, and I was looking through profiles. There was one in particular, PhD holder, has worked on embedded programming before. When he finally got the offer from the company, he actually turned down a role with an MNC that was actually going to pay him a little bit better. But he wanted to be in a startup because he wanted to stay scrappy and get to learn a new skill in an area that was so cutting edge. And the environment was so different in a startup. It was less of that, the corporate cubicle type setup in the office, and more of, I'm going to get to do something really exciting. And 2 years in, we've seen this person go on to tackle things like sales meetings, representing the company such that the founder can take other sales meetings, and also building up his personal skill set. So he's moved on to doing full stack development work, which is not to be, tripled with. It requires front end, back end, and a database type integration. And right now his title is the CTO. So I think that's a really fast career trajectory for anyone within 2 years to get to that point. And that, at the beginning, the startup had seen some of these core competencies and built upon that over time as well. So kudos to both the startup founders and the candidate for doing that.
Yeah, can I just double down on that? Actually, I think Jasmine brought up a really good point. As founders of early stage startups, you probably wouldn't be able to afford really like top-notch talent and match the salaries that they're getting from like Google and all these large MNCs. So maybe don't optimize for that, right? You should be looking for spikes in a candidate. So 1 or 2 traits that you are willing to take a bigger bet on, and not the perfect candidate that checks off all the right boxes. And I think one of the things that EF as well, when we assess future founders, is their growth mindset. So there's the saying in the industry that hire someone that's 60% ready for the job, but if they have the growth mindset, they will be able to learn and scale themselves really quickly. Yeah.
I like to jump in for this too. And I totally agree with the growth mindset. And especially during this, tech talent is hard to find. There's a talent crunch there. There are a lot of people that, the skills are in high demand, especially with the bigger organizations, and there's a very short supply. So having people that don't potentially have the hard skills experience, but are willing to learn, it's definitely a plus point to look for. Another thing for startups, I suggest for the early founders, you're looking for generalists. Being a generalist is because it's a lot more worthwhile having generalists and a specialist on board. And how can you identify generalists? You can identify people with different types of experience, different types of backgrounds. Tiffany mentioned this previously. Someone that's been 10 years in one role or one department is someone that, okay, you think most likely, based on my experience, this person is more of a specialist. They function in a big MNCs. They function in big organizations because that's how it works. If you're looking from a startup perspective, you want someone that has a lot more diverse experience. They might not be so in depth, but I find the depth you can always pick up. It'll be slower, but you can find that information online. You can find it on GitHub. You can find it, or you can get that information through a mentor or something like that.
Yep, great points, everyone. So now that we kind of know, how we should be looking for these people, what kind of deep tech talents would match startups or early stage companies. Now it comes to the other question, which is how can we attract them, right? So Tiffany spoke a little bit about how you may not be able to compete with an MNC in terms of pay. So how can we actually attract the right people? Maybe the best and most attractive talents have already been snapped up by those well-funded startups. So how can we better attract some of these different talents? Maybe Kai, you wanna talk about that a little bit?
Talent attraction, yes, it is extremely difficult. If I just put up a job ad, for example, your hit rate is going to be extremely low. And by hit rate, I mean the amount of people that apply, because there are a few things that you're lacking. There are so many other startups out there. What differentiates you from anyone else, right? You don't have a name behind your brand yet, right? So still the best way to find somebody is through your own personal network, or building a network through LinkedIn, or just asking people. So one of the key things that we learn as a recruitment consultant is just ask. If any conversation you're just having with anybody, be it about like a technical call with someone to advise you or anything, like say, hey, by the way, I'm looking for someone like this. Always drop that. By the way, I'm looking for someone in this. And you'll be amazed at how many recommendations you'll eventually get. And they'll be like, oh yeah, actually, by the way, I do have someone that's looking for a job right now. Or I do have someone that I know is looking out, or someone to recommend. That's so down to it. The best way and best suggestion that I can give when it comes to finding somebody, of course, the other more traditional sense is, yes, you put a job post and you have a whole bunch of people applying, and suddenly your Indeed profile, like company profiles, got 95 applicants, and you have to shortlist all of that, which 90% of which are not applicable because people spam apply. So I just going back to, yes, the more kind of post something on LinkedIn, say you're looking for someone, or ask your network, your friends, or even post it on Facebook. I found people when I posted something on Facebook or on Instagram even. So there are a lot of different avenues where you can just, get the word out that you're looking. The other thing, I guess, is to attend events that EF or SGInnovate conduct. I know there's some networking events that you guys have, and you can go out and ask around from there as well. Or hackathons is another way. Go out looking for talents. Other things when it comes to finding talent, I actually had quite a bit of success when it comes to the gig economy. Finding people that are willing to work on gigs, on projects. They have another full-time job, or they have another part-time job that they're working on, and they have been able, for Mercurics anyway, been able to fill in the gaps that we were missing. So gig economy is something which I personally believe is going to grow dramatically in the next coming few years, and to this extent is already growing. So if you can't find the specific person on a full-time basis, why not think about hiring them on a 2-day, 3-day week basis?
Great. Thanks, Kai. Jasmine, over at SGInnovate, how do you actually attract people, the right people?
Right. So I think on this, there are two parts to this equation. So first is on the talents end, and the second is on the startups end. So probably I'll start on the talents end first. So, people like you and me, we aspire to jobs where we think we make a difference. There's going to be a real world impact to issues that we care about. So, we want to hear from founders. What is it that the startups that they're working on is going to solve? What's their goal? The vision for doing this, and what startups lack in being in business, they could have a lot going for themselves actually, that they're working on cutting edge technology. They've got strong founders with cool backgrounds, institutional investors who have backed them, commercialization pathways that have been either set up or that you are, on track on. These are very helpful to share with prospective talents. And then on the startups end, I think founders also, might want to get realistic. So instead of finding a perfect candidate, it's actually about finding a good match based on the role that you need and with the requirements that you've actually drawn out. So being very specific about what you need, there's a gap within the team that needs to be filled. And it's so much easier when you start off with clear requirements and that you've also done sufficient research on the salary benchmarking, that you've budgeted enough for this role. So I think these two coming together would be, helpful to get to an endpoint of being able to make a good offer, a reasonable one, having the talent make the right decision at the end of the day. And then when interviewing, I think what candidates have done that they described to you during the interview process, I think founders would want to be able to listen better, ask questions, how hands-on was he or she in that process. I think that will give you an ultimate answer whether this person will be a good fit to your team.
Yeah. All great points. So maybe Tiffany, and talk a little bit about how EF actually attracts people. I know you guys have a good have built up this good program, a good network. So how can you help to attract the right talent?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are attracted to the EF program because of our mission, which is to transform the lives of the most impactful people. So yes, even though we help people start their own companies, you will realize that nothing in our mission mentions that. In fact, instead, our mission states that we're here to transform lives of these most impactful people. And the reason for that is not every team, not every individual will leave the EF program with a funded company, but be it 3 months or 6 months that they're in the program, we are hoping that they would have the most accelerated growth of their life and also be now a part of this large global valuable community across the globe in EF. I thought it would, I actually had to think, as the other panelists were sharing on how startup founders can attract talent. So I was actually prepared to share some tips. So maybe I'll just echo what both Kai and Jasmine mentioned. I think first Kai was sharing on how, every conversation you have, just mention that you're hiring. I think we do that as well. So every conversation that we have when we speak with candidates that we want as future founders, we also ask for referrals. So always be selling, always be searching, but also always be cultivating. I think that's really important. Especially with EF, we are essentially asking them to quit their jobs and make a huge career switch. That's not a decision that they can make in a 30-minute phone call with you, right? It's not something to be taken lightly, and we 100% respect that and understand that. So investing in long-term conversations, be it us looking for future founders, or if you're a startup founder looking to hire in the next 12 months or so, investing in these long-term conversations, keeping them updated about your company's vision, your company's progress, and getting them excited for when the role is actually open. It makes it a lot easier to approach this ideal candidate of yours, because by then they're already up to speed with your company's progress, and they're a lot more bought in with your vision. But of course, also be hacky and a bit smart with the target audience that you approach. Don't need to invest in these conversations with people that are never going to move, and that's okay, right? There are always going to be people that will not be a good fit for you, and you as a startup founder, especially, your time is super precious in starting your own company. So being smart about who your target audience is would be helpful.
Great. Thanks. So now we know a bit more about, on the hiring side of things, and we're going to move on to the other side of the table, which is, how do we get hired? How do we get approached? Right? I think a large percentage of the audience is going to want to know a bit more in terms of tips and tricks. So we talked about LinkedIn early on in the panel. Millions of profiles online. Is there anything that someone who's looking to switch, or someone who's looking to join startups, or just any deep tech company, anything that they can add to their profile to make it stand out? Maybe talk about that first, and then we talk about the bad examples that we may have seen that we can share. Kai, do you want to begin?
For specifically the startups, I guess when it comes to the individual profile, the first thing I'd say, we're taking a LinkedIn approach again. The first thing to do is to clean up your LinkedIn profile. Take LinkedIn as it's your marketing tool, right? So put a nice picture of yourself, write a short summary of yourself, and then clean up your experiences. So part of your experiences there, it's basically, imagine this is your resume, right? So just take what's in your resume and put it on your LinkedIn. It's not one and the two. Sometimes I see people, they copy and paste there. They link their resume on their LinkedIn, but to me, it's like your resume is already on LinkedIn. So, just use that. Other than that, when it comes to putting things on don't just put your experience, put your accomplishments. That's the other thing. I think it was previously mentioned as well. Okay, people, yeah, sure, you can list a whole bunch of stuff about, I did this, I did that, but people want to see what have you accomplished previously. Otherwise, when you're looking at what makes your profile stand out from, if you came as a researcher, maybe say a PhD looking for someone, when I used to look for PhDs for example, data scientists and so on and so forth, that were going to go out into the commercial market, for example, I would actually look at their publications. You put your publications at the bottom of your LinkedIn profile too. But the way you word it, you got to be careful as well. So sometimes some of the publication titles can be super confusing and super duper long. You can kind of summarize it. So yeah, put publication at the bottom, and these kind of things turn up. So if say that previously you did a few papers on data mining, data mining, then it shows up on your profile. If someone's searching for it, it shows up. And if I know that a hiring manager is looking for someone that is looking to specialize in data mining, and you did research on that, that's a hit. I know that, okay, I can match these two people together, or potentially the hiring manager can find someone like you. So when it comes to specifically for startups, I guess what I previously mentioned, generalist is something, but that's more about your experience. Oh, another thing as well. Don't just have to put your professional work. You can also put side projects too. People are interested as well. What kind of charities do you do? What kind of extracurricular projects you're doing on the side, be it developing tech for good or anything like that. That one all plays a part. This is all experience. So that's definitely something that you should add as well. Yeah.
Great, thanks. How about you, Tiffany?
Yeah, 100% agree with Kai on adding side projects or any other extracurricular, as we like to say here in Singapore, activity on your LinkedIn, if you have them. But what I would add to that is obviously, besides the obvious things like adding keywords so that you make yourself searchable. So keywords of the programming languages that for example, the technical skills. What I personally am impressed by is when people state the impact of the contribution, real world contribution, real world impact in ideally quantifiable terms. I think it shows, in layman terms as well, I think it also is helpful if you show what you're obsessed about. So if you're working in a certain research area, how can you show that you're obsessed about that tech? At what point did it manifest in your life? Don't write a life story. I think that's not what I'm saying. Be casual as well in listing down your achievements, your accomplishments. Don't over-engineer it. I think when recruiters see a profile that is obviously had a lot of time invested in it, a lot of colorful words in that, I would actually be more wary, because it seems like, do you not have concrete achievements to talk about instead? So along that same train of thought, I actually am also a little bit more wary of profiles that have a lot of adjectives that describe themselves. And especially like behavioral traits, it doesn't help to a recruiter, well, in my opinion at least, when I see someone mentioning that I am a great leader and have great interpersonal skills, great team player, don't tell me these things. Show me through your achievements, things like I've worked in a team of 10, I've led a project. So more quantifiable, more concrete things rather than adjectives. So yeah, if you have a lot of adjectives in your profile, you might want to review that after this. Also adding like supplementary links, like if you have a website, portfolio, that would be great. But one thing I'll just like a final note is that if you've done something, please put it up there. It's such a pity to not have everyone else know what you've worked on and what you've accomplished before. So if you've done something, please put it up there. Make sure that your LinkedIn profile is most updated. I've reached out to so many people thinking they're in Singapore because that's what their profile says. But once you talk to them, they're like, oh, sorry, I just joined a new role 1 month ago. So not looking to move, obviously, but that's not on LinkedIn. Or I've moved to Korea, not gonna come back to Singapore anytime soon. Again, I didn't know that. So make sure it's most updated. And if you, after this, go and try and work on your LinkedIn profile and realize you don't have much to write about, then that's also something to think about. Go seek out opportunities so that you have something to talk about on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think it's super important to have the forward-thinking growth mindset that everyone's talking about. So even if you are 10 years into your research right now and you're looking to switch, of course it's possible, but you have to put some effort into it. You have to, at least we have some guidance now from our panelists as to how we can shape our LinkedIn, how we can shape some of the opportunities that we want to go for, if that's how we're aiming to do it. So at SGInnovate, what would wow you, Jasmine?
Oh, what will wow me? I think, firstly, there's got to be relevance when someone applies to a role that, putting together the right pieces of information that will help me see this person actually thought through how he or she would be able to apply all that past experience onto a role. I think that's where, that's a sweet spot there. Makes things a lot easier also when we have lots to screen through. For every role we put out on behalf of our startups, actually, SGInnovate tends to get about 3x more applicants. And I think in times of COVID, well, I would say it's a time of huge displacement. I mean, it's a phenomenon that it's not great, but it's also an opportunity for our startups to actually be able to hire great talents. And these are talents right here in Singapore that a lot of them have been displaced, looking for new opportunities. So if someone can put together how bits of their career history can be relevant for the role that they're trying to get into, I think that helps us, at least get the conversation going on what are some gaps that could be plugged. And, plus SGInnovate is super active on upskilling, training. We've got lots of in-house training opportunities in areas that are very new. Cybersecurity for one, we've just got our first virtual workshop going today. And also with the junior talents, with lots of programs put together, tying together our founders to band together and support some of these junior talents, getting them ready. So I think to get to a first start, putting together the right pieces of information that are going to be relevant for the role that they want to get into, of course, with the gaps that can be addressed later on, I think that will be a great start.
Great. Okay, so I think go ahead, Kai.
Sorry, there's one more thing I wanted to add. So based on what we've been discussing, there's two parts of recruitment. One is passive and one is active. So we've been discussing a lot about passive recruitment, making your profile visible, and getting people to approach you. There's the other way though. The other way is active, which means that you go and reach out to people that you potentially would want to join, or startups that you see you would like to join, or companies you see you'd like to join. And this is a bit of a different approach, but I find this to have more success when you are looking for an opportunity or you're looking for a job rather than the other way. So what I mean by this is you, for example, reaching out to people on LinkedIn that you can see, okay, this is the hiring manager. So I saw a job post on Indeed for Procter & Gamble, and I saw that they're looking for a head of strategy or a strategy executive, for example. And then I will look for the head of strategy on LinkedIn and actually reach out to this person directly. This is a whole other way. But what you're doing here is you're basically bypassing the shortlisting of traditional applicants on job portals. So you're bypassing that completely, and you now have a direct link to the hiring manager itself. So this can be a whole other topic, which I don't mind. Maybe if people want to find out more, they can reach out to me directly and I can explain it. But this is a whole other thing and a whole other strategy. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that as the other approach to this as well. Yeah.
Great. Yep. Okay, so I think we are a little short on time, so let's move on to some Q&A questions first, and then if the, we can round off the panel after that. So there's a question here by Raymond, if the panelists can take a look. Yeah, so actually, what did research say about the successful traits of various roles? It looks like so far the recruiters are hiring based on heuristics and personal beliefs. Okay, and you wanna take a stab at it, Kai?
Yeah, so I'll first look at the so how recruiters have been hiring. So part of I guess what you develop over years of experience is that kind of gut instinct. The gut instinct of potentially how would this person fit in with this other person. And it's also not just about whether they fit into the company or role, but also about whether or not they would get along with the hiring manager. As a recruitment consultant or as an internal talent acquisition, you actually meet with the hiring manager, you find out what kind of person they are, and you're like, okay, so part of not just the hard skills portion is you trying to match what kind of person would actually fit together and how would this person work together with the hiring manager. So that one, as you mentioned, it's gut feel. It's stuff that you develop based on human interaction over time. But this takes time, and there's no hard and fast rule on how this works. There's no data to back it. So I guess that's also part of what this is. Yes, part of what we're trying to look at too. We want data-backed psychometric testing data to back who would fit into what role. So moving on to the first part of the question. Is there research backing successful traits of various roles? Yes, and this is exactly what we're looking at. So Mercurics has a few PhDs, psychologist PhD backgrounds that are looking and researching this. And actually, since we're talking about this, I'm gonna jump onto the next question which Sharon posted because it's kind of related. For Mercurics, what kind of metrics are you using to match potential candidates to companies? For example, MBTI, Enneagram, or something else. So MBTI, Enneagram, these are all tools that have been developed by other companies, and that's the basis, that's a product, right? So within research, there's a few fundamental personality assessments that have been used. Most prevalent for personality is your 5-factor model, your Ocean, your Big Five. These are all the same thing, by the way. So that's the foundation of personality and backed by research. So everything that we worked on, all the tools, which you can actually try yourself on selfie.ai, I'll send the link down later, are all backed by research. Every single tool that has been crafted and developed is backed by research. And we developed them from scratch ourselves, okay? And this is all linked to our Mercurics AI engine, which interlinks everything and basically the engine infers personality traits based on what you have completed. Okay, so we get an overall profile of an individual based on the middle amount of input that they have put in when it comes to personality assessment. Okay, so that's basically the basis behind that.
Cool. How about Tiffany and Jasmine? You guys have anything to add to successful traits? I think we mentioned this a little bit during the panel, what you guys are looking for. If there's nothing to add, we can move on to the next.
Yeah, just like very quickly, the founder characteristics that I mentioned during my sharing, well, call it research if you will, but essentially it is backed by data. So Entrepreneur First has been around for 8 years now. So we have portfolio and founders in our portfolio company. So we look at the most successful ones and we kind of distill all of the commonalities between them. And hence we arrived at the 3 founder characteristics that we look for. Don't think we want to anything more than that 3, just because personality is so high variance. We think like 3 is useful. Anything more than that is probably like just a lot of noise. Yeah, so that's just one thing I wanted to share.
I guess, I mean, what my team experiences, we hear via our founders also on the feedback that we gather ever so often every time there is a talent that we push to them to assess. And also we speak to a lot of people in the ecosystem. Before, when I was based in Silicon Valley, I think that the scene is a lot more matured. And I think coming back to Singapore, I see that we have moved ahead from where we started out about 5 years. That this ecosystem has been growing. But we're writing the story as we speak, I would say. I mean, all these findings and assessments that we're gathering via the founders was sharing with us their feedback. I think it will be part of what Singapore writes into our startup journey, things that we learn and how we have built from there. And I think this is always going to be evolving along with the current economic situation.
Yeah.
I think one thing I would say about personal belief is that having personal belief is not a bad thing. I think as long as you are very firm on what that belief is and are open to have that being tested based on your experience from the candidate that you're willing to take a bet on. So, and from those learnings, like keep refining those hypotheses and those beliefs.
Yeah, I think there has to be a balance between your personal beliefs and some kind of diversity that you want to encourage within your team as well. So that's something that you can balance. Okay, maybe time for one last question as you go into the last minute. Maybe we can talk about, okay, so people want to know more about LinkedIn still. Maybe just one tip from everyone about headings or details that the hirers are looking for. Just one tip, maybe one extra tip.
Yeah,
go with Tiffany. Mm-hmm.
My tip would be have a conversation starter in your profile, in your description, so that when people reach out to you, firstly, you know that they have read your profile and they've taken a keen interest. But also it just invites conversation, and building your network from conversations will go a very long way.
Great.
Actually, going back to that, the conversation starter, or you approaching people to start a conversation based on common interests and stuff like that. That's one key thing to kind of build relationships. But going back to that, it's difficult, especially if we're going personality, for example. We're talking about extroverts versus introverts. As an introvert, using LinkedIn as a tool is a lot more difficult for you because you're going to use this and you're going to have to write a profile and you have to kind of sell yourself on your profile, and then you have to actively go and reach out to people you don't know. And reaching out to people you don't know through LinkedIn it's hard. It's scary, especially if you're not that kind of person. If it's not your personality, it's very difficult. And I give you some experience from when I first became a recruitment consultant like 3 years ago. We would have to actively, part of the job to actively reach out to people on LinkedIn, use it as a tool. And to me, initially, that was quite uncomfortable. Like, oh, just ask them for a coffee, people used to say to me. Just message them and ask them for a coffee. I'd be like, but what if they refuse? And you'd be amazed at how many people actually do not refuse. You ask them for a coffee, they don't even ask why. You just say, hey, next week, are you available for coffee on Monday at 5 p.m.? Most people won't reject you. And I was amazed by that. And it actually takes you to just try it for you to find out yourself. So if you want to use LinkedIn as a tool, it is not just a resume that's online, it's a networking tool. And use it to build your network. That's what I want to go back to. Yeah.
Okay, Jasmine.
So I think that, well, I consider myself to be somewhat an introvert despite, what I do for a living, but I do enjoy conversations. And I think LinkedIn has been actually helpful because it gives me a platform to reach out other than, going face-to-face, an alternative channel. I would think that building up relevance, I think just repeating that point that I brought up before, putting together the bits within your past history and your interests to build relevance for what you want to get into. I think that would be a great first step. And building on what Kai said, people tend to be open to meeting new people. I think we see a lot of good in that. And being prepared for such sessions, knowing what you have in mind to ask of that person helps you also get to the next coffee than, that first coffee being the first one and probably not second one coming anytime soon. So being prepared, getting yourself relevant with the right resume and profile that you want to showcase online, I think that sets a great stage for the next conversation.
Okay, great. Okay, I think we have overshot the panel a bit in terms of time. So just want to thank all the panelists and all the participants for joining us today. So we can't have we can't have a real coffee, but we'll have virtual coffee with you guys for sure. Yeah. So maybe I'll hand the time back over to Susan. Yeah.
One more thing I'd like to add.
Yes.
So we developed a little tool over the past few weeks on Mercurics. So I'll link it in the chat. It's basically a work from home profiler. So with this whole working from home, it's a little bit of a fun tool you guys can try out. So it's a bit of a kind of a psychometric test linked with the current situation. You can find out your work from home profile. It gives you some tips as well how to cope based on your personality and how you're working from home. Yeah. So I linked it in the chat. You guys can try it out.